In today's video, I'm going to show you a little trick that a lot of composers use to spice up their chord progressions a little bit. And it's one that you can use with your students and they're really going to love it. So let's get straight into it now. I'm going to use as a demonstration one of the chord progressions from this download that I have created. It's called the Easy Chord Progressions to Inspire Creativity workbook, I guess. And it's got 27 chord progressions that you can use with your students. We'll pop a link over here to be able to download that. I'm going to use this chord progression, the second one on this sheet. It's number 7. So the chords are C, E flat on C, F on C, and then C. And so that sounds like this played in its original way. I'm going to use inversions and just chords in my right hand and a simple bass note in my left hand. So that's the chord progression as it's written. Now here, I'm going to play it again, and this time I'm going to add a note. And I want to see if you can tell what it is and what I'm doing. This is the trick that I'm going to show you, which will add a little bit of spice to your students' chord progression. So here's the new version. Could you tell the difference? Well, what I've done is I've added a common tone that's played in every single chord through that chord progression. And the common tone was this one here. You might have that stuck in your head a little bit now. So I'll play it again. Listen out for the G. Now, of course, the G is common, is already in the chord C and E flat, but it's not in the chord F. That was the chord that was written. So we've just added that, effectively making the F an F add 2 chord. And what I think happens, particularly if you play a chord progression like this on, let's say, a string sound on a digital keyboard, it starts to give the progression, it kind of holds it together a little bit more. It gives it more of a direction and kind of makes it sit a little bit better. It doesn't always work and it can get a little bit repetitive, so it's not something that you want to do all the time, but definitely look out for it and explore it with your students. There's another great example of this in Hans Zimmer's score for Interstellar. Now, this is a fantastic space movie. I'm really into my space movies, so I really love this one. And he did a lot of the score on pipe organ, which is a bit of an aside because that's got nothing to do with the chord progression. But let me play you the chord progression and see if you can spot the common tone in his chord progression. It's exactly the same device that he's used. So here's the main theme from Interstellar. It's probably, again, stuck in your head. It's like a bell ringing, and perhaps that was the effect. This E, the note E, was his common tone in this chord progression. And a lot of people will actually play it by accenting it and crossing over with the left hand. So it's something like this. So what he's done is, instead of a very simple chord progression, which really this is built on, which is F, G, and A minor, I mean, that's really all that he's doing. He's just made it sound a bit more interesting by adding a major 7 to the F to give it to add the E. He's using a G6 chord, so G major chord with the 6, and A minor chord, which already has the E in it. And the reason this chord progression sounds so good, even though it's really, at its bare bones, really simple, is because of that common chord tone that he's kept through the chord progression. So definitely check that one out if you'd like to explore what he's done. And I'm going to give you one final example. It's an unusual song called Sink the Lighthouse by Above and Beyond. This chord progression takes this idea of common tones to the absolute nth degree. The chord progression is 8 chords long, and they've managed to get a common tone through all of those chords and make it sound really good. So let me play the chord progression. So no doubt you've picked the common tone. This one here, E flat. It's in every one of these chords, which is actually quite remarkable that this even works. The first chord is E flat 5, which means it's a chord without the third. So you actually, when you listen to this song, and I recommend you listen to it, we'll make sure there's a link for you to follow, you actually don't really know whether it's a major or a minor chord progression to start with, or song even, until the singer comes in, and he's definitely in a minor mode. So it kind of plays with your mind a little bit. Sounds like it's a little bit out of key. It's quite an interesting situation. So I'm going to play the chord progression again, and I'll actually write up on the screen what the chords are. So here we go. So there you go. That's taking the idea of a common tone in a chord progression really to about as far as I think I've ever heard it used before. Definitely a great song to explore with your students if they're unpacking chord progressions. And look, I've come across all of these just by playing and exploring these progressions myself. And I have always, ever since I was quite young, so early teenagers, or maybe 10, 11, 12, when I heard something that I really liked on the radio, which it was back then, or on a record even, I would go and sit down at the piano and try and play it. And I've done that all my life. And Sink the Lighthouse, when I heard that song, I was like, okay, I have to work out how they've done this. And that was what made me go to the piano, work it out, sit there, write it out, and go, oh, hang on. That's why that sounds so cool. It's because of that common tone. So there you go. I hope that's a little trick that you can explore in your own chord progression work and also with your students. And it's just one of those things to listen out for, particularly if they've perhaps written a chord progression that has 4 chords in it, let's say, and there's a common tone between 3 out of the 4, then see if you can add that tone into the 3rd chord and see what the sound is like. It will also then open up some discussions for you about, well, what is an add 2 chord? How's that different to a 9th chord? Or maybe the extra note will turn something into a suspension. You can start talking about that. Now, if teaching chords is something that you'd like some more help with, then please do check the links here, and we'll pop some below as well for more about my approach to doing that. And I would love to hear from you. Have you heard a song with a common tone in it, like I've demonstrated today, or have you written one recently, or have a student ever explored that? Just leave a comment below. I'd love to find out more about what you've been doing. See you soon. Hey, just before you go, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, then please just click the link over here, and I've lined up another great video for you, which is going to keep unpacking this idea of chord-based teaching, and it's right here waiting for you. I'll see you soon.